Guys, welcome back to the channel. A bit different video today. I'm going to do a video on the 3080 Ti, the unicorn of graphics cards that I was finally able to get my hands on. And I want to show some benchmarks not for gamers, nothing against gamers or anything, but this is for actual work. Make the card actually make me some money for my job. So what I got here is a basic scene using Blender, Cycles, rendering engine. I got some GPU temps here. This thing's just idling. Give you some, I'm gonna kind of show what I'm comparing to here. I got two RTX Titans in here on a dedicated cooling loop with no downpipe. So you can see the water's flowing in here. I gotta add the downpipe so it doesn't aerate. Soft tubing because I just had my hard lines burst and was in a pinch, had to get it plumbed back up, get it back up and running again. I'll get the hard tubing in there, but spare you the backstory. Two RTX Titans running on a liquid cooling loop on a D5 pump with, I think it's a 480. Guys, welcome back to the channel. It'll be a little bit different video today than what's normally on my channel, but I want to go over real quick the differences in operating temperatures when these GPUs are at maximum load, not for gaming, for 3D artists, rendering, CAD work, that kind of stuff. Give you a rundown on my system, spare you all the backstory, and I will just make a note here. Yes, soft tubing. I had this hard plumbed, and I had a line fitting burst, O-ring, water everywhere. Long story short, had to get back up and running. Went with the old reliable soft tubing for production purposes. So we'll go back to hard tubing one of these days when I have time. But anyway, what's in here? These are two RTX Titans that are water cooled on a D5 pump, and those are attached on this side to a 480 millimeter Corsair Hydro X radiator, and inside of the radiator is the trusty old C1000 pure clear coolant. So what I want to do is do a compare and contrast between air cooling the 3080 Ti under full load, show you some operating temperatures, and then what I'm going to do is water cool it, put it in this loop, and then show you the difference. So right now what I'm using as a benchmark here is I have a scene that I've created in Blender. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is with the 3 graphics cards running with RTX denoising working. You can see it's very fast with the 3 cards. If we go into preferences, you can see here, there's our cards that are running, and obviously RTX and no CPU processing. So just those little movements that I just did on the camera here, you can see the spikes. But just to give you a rundown on operating temperatures, we have our 3080 Ti just sitting in there pretty much at idle at 64 degrees, and our Titans are running at a nice chilly 46. So let me load up the system. I'm going to throw this on a render. And let's see when we ramp these loads up to 100% on these cards, I'm going to show you what the stability of the Titans are versus the air-cooled 3080. So while that's kind of firing up there in Cycles, I'm going to show you here. There's the 3080, the unicorn that everyone is fighting over to get. I actually paid $750 markup on top of the MSRP just to get that here, to get some jobs done here and for work. So if we look over here, I mean, the gouging is crazy. I can't, well, I'm not going to get into the supply and demand thing, but it sucks. But I'm going to stop the video here in a second and bring it back on after this has been rendering a few frames. But basically what we're going to look at here is, this is your 55-degree median line, and this is the Titans usually love to hover, in this area here, and the 3080 is considerably hotter. 71 degrees now. I've seen it get up to 88 in a full scene render, where I'm rendering like 1,000 frames at 1,500 iterations per frame. So gets pretty hot, to say the least. Now the cooling on this tower, this is the Thermal Take 900 series, I believe. It's really, really good. I actually ran it also with all the glass panels off and an oscillating fan blowing on it, and I can only get about a 2.5 degree drop in temperature with that thing air cooled. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that it's, you know, it's kind of shoved in here and there's no other airflow to get to it from the Titans. I'm not quite sure. You know, I do have the fan set up to where it's getting the air out of the case. So that's kind of what's going on. But you can see here, just as I'm kind of BSing to you here, the operating temperature on that 3080 Ti is at 75 degrees, 76 degrees. And, you know, obviously we're at 100% load. So that's what you want to check it on. And then if we look at the Titans on that cooling loop, they're just staying at a nice chilly 50. So my goal when I add the 3080 Ti to this loop is to try to keep everything around 55. I mean, obviously we're going to be passing more hot water through that loop. So I'm going to try to get, my target is about 55 under full load in a perfect world. Keep these things nice and cool. You can see now we're getting up around 80. It's getting, you know, that's not the limit for this card, you know, but in terms of lifespan of the card and it having to do this every single day, day in and day out, it's going to tax the system. So I'm going to cut the video, let it keep throwing a couple more frames, and we'll look at the averages. We'll look at the curve here and the averages and see where we're at, and then I'm going to water cool it. So it's going to be a long video, but it might help you 3D artists out there. Now I figure while this is running its render, you can kind of see here, green line is the 3080. These are the Titans. While that's running, I want to kind of show you the cooling block. The only one that's available for this card that I can find is the EK Quantum Vector, and FE stands for Founders Edition. So what I have is the Founders Edition card. So this is the block that goes on it. I paid $279 plus shipping. So figure $300 for this card. I can pull it up here. There's the, I mean, this is definitely not a Jay's 2 cents video, but it'll give you some info. $279 plus shipping. This is the black one. They don't have them in stock right now, but you got to keep checking. They do come back in stock. This is what you get, and this is probably, if you guys are gearheads, this is probably one of the nicest pieces of hardware I've ever really held in my hand. I mean, this thing is heavy. It is machined out of a single piece of billet aluminum for the frame. The internals are all copper, and it is a behemoth of a cooling block. It requires disassembly to install. I am not doing actual install video on this. There is a video I'll link down below by one of the well-known PC channels that actually does it way more justice, better view. I don't have the time to do a video on it. But this is the setup here. It's very, very heavy. So you're definitely going to want to use the 2 screws that you need to attach it to the frame of the chassis of the PC, but the IO port. But that's the block. This is hopefully what I'm going to get. Ooh, I don't know. 30 degrees, hopefully less, under full load. But let's look at our graph here. So this thing is still cranking 100%, rendering frame by frame by frame at 1500 samples. And you can just see the difference. I mean, you got on its coolest time 44 degrees, and then you got them, you know, ramping right back up, almost 88 degrees Celsius. So you can see here 53, 54, and then that 3080 is 80 degrees. So like I said, last night it was getting up around 90. So that's kind of the norm for this card. So it's way up here. So I can't stress that enough. You guys are doing this kind of work. I mean, gaming is a whole nother thing. That's, you know, you're running a card hard for gaming. That's another thing. But when you're actually dependent on these things for work, or you know, you got a deadline, you got to make money. These high temperatures up here is just, in my previous experience, is certain death for a GPU. So without further ado, I'm going to get this thing out of the PC, get it on the bench. I'll take some footage of it, get it torn down, get this put back on, get this installed, hooked into the loop, run it, and then we'll see where we're at temperature-wise. Well, here's just a little bit of footage here of this Vector FE cooling plate water block. You can see how nice this thing is. And here's the heart and soul of the 3080 Ti in all its glory, about to get cleaned and thermal pads put on. That's the back plate. Pretty easy disassembly. There's a video, like I said, I'll link below, that shows you how to do it, but it's really just a couple screws, nothing big, nothing major. So this is the beast that it's going on. So what I'm gonna do now, I gotta put these thermal pads on the actual GPU, get it put into the water block, and then we can get it in the PC. So the most tedious part about this, I think, is cutting up all these thermal pads and getting the both sides of the tape off of there. So that's what it looks like, all padded up on this side. Now we just gotta put our thermal paste on here, drop it into the block. Yeah, some more pads here on the back side of the card before you put the back plate on. That's what it's gonna look like, more or less. All right, guys, there it is, all installed. I did not hook up the RGB header just because I don't have space on my motherboard. You can see there's no room to actually plug in back there, it's too tight. So there it is, all installed. Ran it in the same loop as the other two GPUs. Obviously need to fix my downpipe there for flow, but I have this now running on the same scene, rendering in cycles. And here's our trend after it's been running for a while. So let's take a look. My target of 55 degrees isn't possible, but the good thing is that all of these cards are sharing the same 480 mil radiator, and it looks like the hottest this thing's really getting is 66, 67 after it's been running for, you can see every time this dips, it's rendered a 1500 cycle or 1500 iteration pass on a scene. So it's done quite a few, and it's holding consistent in the 50s to 60s. So way better than those 80 degree, almost 90 degree sometime plus temperatures. So putting this thing under water cooling is definitely a positive thing. Now I could, my CPU is the only thing on this PC that is on a dedicated 480 mil radiator. So I may even put that other 3080 on that radiator to free up some of the cooling for those two Titans, but really just nitpicking at that point. I mean, these things at max 100% core load is hottest it's getting is 66 Celsius. That's pretty good. Pretty good in my book. So true test will be to run this thing all night long, or at least for an 18-hour period for a full day, and see, you know, what the average, you know, temperature is. I'm definitely going to be doing benchmarks, but I know it's a long video, but it is a good video on compare and contrast the 3080 Ti on water cooling versus air cooling. I think that this is a good representation, at least for someone that's a 3D artist, someone that's using these GPUs at 100% load consistently. You know, this is what you can expect. So I noticed too when I fired it up, you can kind of see the curve kind of trended upward here when they got kind of at their operating temps, and it kind of holds true. Now it is slightly creeping up here as time's been going by, hitting 66, 68 I saw. So these renders usually will, you know, 1500, you know, frames at a time will usually kind of plateau at a certain point after it's been running for hours. So I'm guessing the hottest any of this stuff is going to get is maybe 70 degrees Celsius. So those dips down to 50 are also nice. It gives it a break in between passes. So yep, see how many times I can say so in one video. This is, hopefully if this video helped you guys, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I do all sorts of random videos and how to fix stuff, so you'll learn something on my channel. So thanks for watching. Get you in the next one. Later. I know you probably watched the whole video, or maybe you didn't, but when you got to the end of the video, I was running some temperatures, and I wanted to show you, I reconfigured my cooling loop like I had maybe mentioned in the clip, and I took the 3080 Ti off of the Titan loop, which is this water pump here, and I added it to the CPU loop, which the only thing on this radiator back here with the 4 fans on each side has 4 fans. The only thing that's on that loop is the CPU. So I tied in the 3080 to that cooling loop and started running it, and you can see here that it's running even cooler. So spike temperatures hitting about almost 50 Celsius, sometimes 50 Celsius. You'll see here Um, you'll see here, this is the 3080 Ti, and at right now it's doing a render over here. Cycles, same thing, 1500 iteration passes, and I mean the Titans are just ice cold, and so is the 3080. So you'll see here as it's about to start up another render, these numbers are very impressive for the amount of load that the 3D software puts on these cards. I just want to let the camera run here. I know this video is long, so if this is helping you in any way understand the temperature differentials and the different loop patterns, please thumbs up and subscribe. If you guys want, I'll do more PC style videos. They're not going to be fancy, but this is the real deal when it comes to actually understanding how to keep these things cool and understanding how to build stuff to make it work right. So, I mean, very impressive numbers. So just taking that one GPU off of that radiator really is taking a lot of the heat out of the system on that side. You know, and maybe if I added a bigger reservoir on that D5 pump, I'd have a different result, but yeah, you can see there's the lines that are going in, and so the 3080 is running on this reservoir, left side radiator, and the CPU, while the two Titans are running on this reservoir, the radiator on this side. So two components per 480 millimeter radiator with 4 fans each seems to be the ticket. I also added the downpipe inside of this tube, temporary soft tube in there, but you don't want aeration with that tube off of there. I was trying to use this demonstration. I broke my other tube, but it was nice to see the flow. You can kind of see it, but it introduces too much air into the system. And then when you shut down the system, it'll backflow the water back into the reservoir and overfill it because it's being displaced by air because it's not a sealed system. So definitely need the downpipes on there to prevent aeration and air getting into the lines. But I just wanted to do a follow-up on this video to show the change in the cooling loop and really what it did. I mean, it really dropped those temperatures down even better. I mean, this thing's barely hitting 50 degrees Celsius under 100% load. I mean, can't complain at all. This thing will run, it'll run forever like this. So anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, thumbs up, and I'll get you on the next one. Later.